And thank you. What I'd like to do briefly is give you a general overview of a modern Serbian company, and I say that we're very proud of the fact that we are Serbian with a capital S, and tell you a bit about what we do, and then go on to give you a brief overview of how we're approaching some of our mining areas where we specialize in geologically complex polymetallic mineral resources. The areas that usually the mining houses, big mining houses, think are too hard. And I'll tell you a little bit about our approach to mining, processing, and most importantly to waste disposal. Metalfair is an industrial group of companies involved in steel production, trading, mining and energy. We've currently got about 500 employees, and we're expecting to grow significantly over the next few years from an extremely solid base. When I say we're Serbian with a capital S, the big difference we are one of the emerging new generation of Serbian companies that operate to international best practice, both in financial and through to technical and all elements of what an international company has to, standards that it has to operate to be successful, without losing the huge benefits of primarily having a very strong Serbian resources in human resources in terms of all levels from technical through to management. Currently we produce steel, recycled steel from a greenfield steel mill, not an old steel mill generated from the socialist times that works very efficiently, low cost. We have got a coal mine in Montenegro, and we're operating several other operations. Where our coal mine in Montenegro, at Barani, that is a significant lignite resource that is operating the same way as it's probably operated for the last 100 years. What the challenge there is to develop that using modern mining techniques in both mining methods, using continuous longwall mining, transport systems through a new drift, and to increase production to about 500,000 tons a year to feed into an on-site power station, which fits very strongly with the Montenegrin government's policy for generating more power. We also operate a number of quarries and supplying the emerging civil engineering and construction sector within Serbia that again is growing with the construction of roads, building elsewhere. The area that we're concentrating on now is what is a relatively new venture, but it is to move into mining where we are a junior small-scale type mining operation, and we currently have exploration areas in 3 parts of Serbia where we are primarily looking for base metals, precious metals, and our exploration is well advanced, and we're looking to develop small-scale polymetallic mining over the next couple of years. What is our approach going to be, and what I'm very much going to promote to you today is small-scale mining that allows us to start small, phase in with flexible mining approach to deal with complex polymetallic resources and to generate early cash flow. What are the geological issues that we've found in the Balkans? Historically, it's mined from underground mining operations. Most of the historical mines are closed. Extensive historical exploration. Emphasis has always been placed on the delineation of the resource, and there's often limited information on the metallurgical properties of the ore, which is vital in understanding processing of a metallic ore body. The way we approach it is always to verify the historical data, look at the geological interpretation, focusing on an understanding of the ore type that we're dealing with, and providing a resource model so we can really understand what we're dealing with. One of the areas that we concentrate in is probably acting an increased emphasis at the early stages on mineralogy and metallurgy. I think when you are looking to take on a truly polymetallic ore body, you've really got to understand at a very early stage what you're dealing with. Often you can become blinded by the word copper or gold or other things, but you've got to be very disciplined. You've got to look at the ore body, decide what your economic targets are, what your byproducts are, and what your waste is. Because if the copper's not strong enough, it might look good on a report, but it could easily be a waste that contaminates what could be a primary ore body. So the economic drivers of successfully mining a polymetallic is really understanding what you're dealing with and how you deal with it, because you've multiple ores to deal with. Here's just a flow chart of the way we approach going through historic verification, looking at the resource, geological, mineralogy, metallurgy, and then coming back down to mine planning, mine processing, and most importantly, dealing with the mineral waste products. And I suppose with some of us that are operating in the European Union, it's a breath of fresh air operating in the Balkans because we don't have European Union regulations. And one of the key regulations is the dreaded Mineral Waste Directive that we're now dealing with in Europe. And I'm very much of the view that you have to understand how you can economically dispose of your mineral waste at a very early stage, because that's the hard bit. Often mining and processing the ore can be easier. I'm now going to talk a little bit about underground mining, and again the debate traditionally is go open cast first because it's cheaper, it can be bigger, and it's a great thing. And underground mining is difficult and expensive, and it's dark, and it's a horrible hole down there. I'm very much promoting the view that the way forward now, particularly in small scale mining, is underground mining, and open cast mining is becoming a lot harder, open pit mining, in terms of environmental impacts, permitting, regulations. And what we have developed is a generic model very similar to what was described for the Sasa mine this morning, but it is a smaller scale approach to underground mining, where we're trying to drive the unit cost down and make underground mining cost per ton lower, because when you add in a lot of the other costs of the long lead time in permitting an open pit, the restoration and the other factors, the financial model, in my view, is going to emerge where you're looking at small scale polymetallics, smaller scale mining. The cost model is going to emerge very strongly between going underground and open pit. Traditionally, we've found, and this is a very typical approach to small scale track mining, 2x2 tunnels, and I'd probably say that you could efficiently narrow vein mining by this method up to about 100,000 tons. But then scaling it up to more modern trackless mining, where we want to lift it and reduce cost using mobile equipment. Now, there's obviously, I'm giving you just an overview of approach to a particular ore body, but there can be a mixture of both, where transport systems and trackless mining. But in this approach, we're taking effectively larger size tunnels, slightly bigger 7-ton scoop trams, using a underground trackless haulage fleet, remote loaders, 20-ton trucks, long hole drills, development drills, and for a mid-size between, say, 2 and 10 meter vein system, which is often the type of veins we're seeing, that we can then produce using a relatively small equipment fleet up to 250,000 tons of run-of-mine ore. And looking at a lot of the ore bodies that we're now planning in the Balkans, when you're looking for a 10-year mine life, looking back, we have to be able to mine at around 250,000 tons of ore a year efficiently to make those deposits economically viable. There's just a typical view through a sub-vertical vein system on a sub-level open stoping method of mining. The sequence of mining: drilling the development tunnels and crosscuts, long hole drilling into the stoping system, load out the stopes at draw points, loading them into underground dump trucks, and hauling through a decline system to add it to surface. Very simple. About five or six primary pieces of equipment will produce 250,000 tons of ore a year. Underground hazards, yes, you've got them. These are typical. Ground control is always there. Where there's old mining, as we're finding in the Balkans, have been before, inrush, fire, all of them are well known, can be dealt with. Open pit still has a place, and again, it's the inevitable choice, particularly when you've got near surface outcropping ore bodies. Do you go open pit? Do you go underground? Narrow vein open pit, you want to keep the working area as small as possible. It reduces the environmental impact, and there are methods of mining these efficiently. One of the key issues with open pit comes back to how you approach it. And the big issue when I'm talking about mining an open pit, the difference between an open pit and a construction quarry. An aggregates quarry is a big hole, and it will always be a big hole. If you're taking out a vein system or an ore body, it is a temporary land use. You put it back. Effectively, you take out the mineral, you keep the working area as small as possible, you take the overburden rock and you place it behind you. You keep the working area as small as possible, and you definitely put it back. It's a temporary land use, and that is sustainable. I'm often asked the difference between quarrying and open pit mining. That's the definition. This is a way forward, but obviously it's got to be in the right location, the right domain. So you can mine efficiently with open pit. My concern on open pit mining is the regulation and environmental impacts and all the issues that surround it. You just look at how long it takes to permit an open pit compared to an underground mine. Processing. Again, we're primarily looking at our projects in the Balkans of free milling, but with a polymetallic, you've usually got a few challenges because you've got things in the ore that you don't want, and often it's removing contaminants. The age-old argument, when does copper content become an asset and when is it a contaminant? And so the approach that we take on this is to allow us to develop linked to small complex deposits, small processing, early cash flow to leave in with modular. The next generation, in my view, in mineral processing is small-scale, modular, flexible processing equipment that will be able to work from, well, anything down from 2, but say 10 to 40 tons per hour is ideal size for that. Again, it's the normal process: crushing, concentration, grinding, flotation, filtration. But you bolt onto that the removal of contaminants, which could require specialist leaching in other areas. This is why modular plant that is flexible is so important when you're dealing with processing a complex ore body. This is typical of the type of modular flexible plant that you build up in modules. Clearly for the Balkans, we would look then to winterize it so it would be enclosed in cladding and other areas. Finally, but not least importance, is mineral waste disposal. Unless we can dispose of our waste in a sustainable manner, there is no future for mining in Europe or anywhere. We have to be able to deal with our waste in a sustainable manner. I would argue the best way to plan a mine is to plan first how you're going to close it, and second how you're going to dispose of your waste, and then think about how you deal with the ore body. Traditionally, we use tailings lagoons. We send all the tailings out in suspended solids in a big lagoon, let them settle, and take them back. When you look at the problems mining's had in the Balkans over the years, most of those are related to problems with tailings lagoons. I would put forward now, particularly in a wet cold climate where the snow melts in April, that modern small-scale mines should be planned on process tailings, where you can process the tailings, control how you handle the tailings, because you're getting a wet sand, where you can use the tailings beneficially and not require just putting them in a big lake that can damage a whole host of things. From a practical viewpoint, they're the hardest thing in my experience to permit and regulate and restore. Therefore, I would put forward that is the future way. So what I've tried to do is give you an oversight into our approach to mining small deposits in the Balkans, how we'll be looking to develop our deposits over the next couple of years. And I believe very strongly, to answer the first question, is there is a very good future for mining in the Balkans, but we must not lose sight of the small complex deposits, because that's where most of the ore is contained. Thank you.